Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we're doing our rapid reaction segment from the Vikings' loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road yesterday. Obviously not a very thrilling Vikings football game. I don't think too many fans were very excited watching their team play yesterday now. Overall, just was not a good performance from the Vikings. A lot of that hinges probably on Sam Bradford, who, as I'm sure just about everyone is aware now, was inactive for Sunday's performance. And that kind of changed the dynamic, and the Vikings did not look like a good team on Sunday. So we'll talk all about that and more here. Let's first get the word from our sponsor out of the way. Black Stack Brewing, brand new brewery smack dab in the middle of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Wide range of clean, flavorful brews and a massive, bright tap room perfect for intimate settings, all the way to special events. Black Stack Brewing, 755 North Pryor, just north of Menards, off of University Avenue. And then shout out to our sponsors over at the Twin Cities Directory, the best way to explore delicious bites and fun-filled nights that Minneapolis and St. Paul have to offer. Check it out at www.twincities.directory. That's www.twincities.directory, helping you discover the real Twin Cities. All right, Drew, so let's start with the offensive side of the football here. Obviously, Sam Bradford inactive, as I just said. Probably the biggest reason for the Vikings not even getting over 10 points. Not getting into, just not looking like a very good team overall. What'd you see from Case Keenum on Sunday, and what'd you think of the Vikings offense?
The Vikings offense was stagnant. There was kind of towards the end of the second quarter and into the early third quarter, there was a little bit of life there. Where they kind of got into a bit of a rhythm, but I thought the offensive line struggled quite a bit, especially Nick Easton and Mike Remmers. Remmers mostly in pass protection. I thought he was solid as a run blocker, but Nick Easton, man, he does not look like it. That Alex Boone move doesn't look very good right now.
No, it does not,
because he has not filled those shoes very well. And obviously Case Keenum moving in, I'm sure we know Case Keenum's not an elite player by any means. But I was a little bit frustrated with the way he responded to pressure. And we've become accustomed to Sam Bradford kind of sitting in one spot and getting rid of the ball somewhere. But what Keenum did was he would back up. Like his first move was to go backwards when, for instance, a tackle was beat. He would go backwards to get away from it instead of stepping up when there was a pocket or whatever and creating more of a mess, throwing off your back foot or taking a sack for like 13 yards instead of 5 yards. So those were some mistakes I saw from Case Keenum. And I just think that moving forward, that's going to be a real concern if Sam Bradford is out for more than just this game. Obviously, the whole Teddy thing, we heard some optimistic news there, but for the time being, I'm kind of thinking Case Keenum will be the Vikings quarterback for at least the Tampa Bay game, possibly the Detroit game after that. This bone bruise or whatever it is does not sound good, and Case Keenum did not give me much hope for this offense moving forward.
Yeah, it's really disappointing because Sam Bradford obviously comes out and lights up the New Orleans Saints, and he doesn't even get to, take a bow against.
It's the most Sam Bradford thing ever that he just probably his best performance in a game ever. And then he,
and then when are we going to see him again next? We don't know. That's
it's a realistic possibility he doesn't start again this year. I mean, if there are a lot of other circumstances that could affect that.
Yeah, there's a lot's going to go into figuring out who the quarterback is going to be moving forward over the next couple of weeks here. And this knee injury, like you said, we've heard a lot of speculation on it, both from credible sources and not so credible sources. We saw that Dr. Chow, the Pro Football Doc, out for I believe it's San Diego, wrote something along the lines of that treatment isn't going to help this injury for Sam Bradford, that it's more a timing thing, that he just needs to kind of stay off of it. And then in a couple of weeks, up to 6, as Mike Zimmer actually kind of said, without maybe intentionally trying to say so, gave us a general timetable here that it could be up to 6 weeks, that Bradford might not be playing for a while here. So if it is Case Keenum, Vikings have a tough stretch of games here. Obviously, you just mentioned both Tampa Bay and Detroit. It's not looking great right now. It really isn't. No. It's not, and like you said with the offense too. It's not that it's not that Case Keenum was really bad either. It's just that he's not going to be able to hold up under pressure consistently. Right. We were able to see Sam Bradford be able to do some things last year despite the pressure, and that created a huge issue for the Vikings. But imagine, a bottom tier quarterback. This isn't a top 32 quarterback starting for the Vikings anymore, and now he's dealing with probably more pressure than Sam Bradford faced last week against New Orleans. It was a recipe for disaster. I mean, what can we say here? I mean, I think a lot of people expected the Vikings to go to Pittsburgh even with Sam Bradford and lose that football game. So to come out with, arguably the sloppiest effort that we've seen during the Mike Zimmer era in terms of penalty yardage. Not pass protect well. Not establish the running game until, the third quarter was when Dalvin Cook started to really get going a little bit. They did nothing right, at least on the offensive side of the football. Nothing. There was no reason from just strictly in the offensive vantage point, the Vikings did not do enough to win this football game. Not even close.
No, I mean, you can't. For one thing, you can't score 9 points.
No,
you can't miss extra points. You can't try fake punts that are miserably executed.
Oh my god!
I mean, we'll have to. So I hope somebody asked Prefer about that this week, or Zimmer. I guess I'm not sure. I didn't watch the Zimmer presser, but man, that was horrible. And then you have Brian Robinson jumping offside on 4th and 1 when there's absolutely no way in this real life that Ben Roethlisberger was going to snap that ball at his own 25 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Tomlin even thought it was worth it to try that.
Yeah.
And then there was what else was there? I mean, Jerick McKinnon was taking kicks out from literally the 9.5 yards deep. It was brutal, sloppy play. It's uninspired football. This wasn't on just Case Keenum. It wasn't on just Nick Easton. It wasn't on just the offense, but. I thought the defense outside of the penalties was okay. I just think, the Steelers were fortunate to get all the penalty yardage they did, and then they capitalized on it, and the Vikings couldn't even get past 50-yard line most of the game. So
yeah, we can jump over to the defensive side of the ball because there really isn't a whole lot more to say about the offense. I mean, they were stagnant, like you said. They didn't do enough. They didn't run the ball effectively. They weren't consistent. They didn't do a lot of the things we saw last week in New Orleans. Primarily, they didn't extend drives to keep their defense off the field.
Also, for what it's worth, Dalvin Cook dropped another pass. It was a designed screen. He was lined up wide in a tunnel screen and went right through his hands.
Nobody looked good on offense. Seriously, nobody looked good. Even Diggs had an offensive pass interference penalty.
That wasn't a penalty though. That was not a flag. That should not have been thrown.
I guess, but it was still called, and it still backed the Vikings up 10 yards, whatever it was. So, it was just so painful to watch. And when I went back and actually watched the the offense play in the first half again, it was just like. I don't know, dude. It was a straight up disaster. Everything came together for the perfect storm, and the Vikings scored 9 points and lost by 17 on the road. Like we said in the pregame show, before we even knew about the Sam Bradford injury, this game was going to be tough. And I think I said I thought that the Vikings could win this game. You said you had the Steelers winning no matter what. This is going to be a tough game no matter what, and the Vikings just made it harder offensively.
Right. Well, if you had told me. Before the game, so I predicted the Steelers to win with Bradford in the game. But if you would have told me that you're going to keep Le'Veon Bell to under 100 yards total and Antonio Brown under 100 yards on, I think, he had 5 or 6 catches or something, and I think Rose only allowed 3 catches to him. If you would have told me that, then I probably would have reversed my pick and had picked the Vikings, because the real reason I picked the Steelers in this game was those 2 guys right there, and the Vikings were able to neutralize them. Their run defense was pretty solid against Bell. They were patient. And let Bell kind of come to them instead of vice versa. And then Brown was contained. The big play didn't happen for him. It happened for Martavis Bryant and other guys. But, I really thought the Vikings would be able to contain Bryant, contain Juju Smith-Schuster, contain these other guys that were not Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell. But turns out if you focus too much attention on these other guys and you leave one-on-one, Martavis Bryant with Trey Waynes, and things don't go so well.
Yeah, the Vikings, I think it was Matthew Collar that wrote the article. But he said something along the lines of, with the headline, was saying that the Vikings studs, they did their job on the defensive side of the football. We saw Linval Joseph play pretty well.
Yep.
Obviously, he's the tone setter, stopping Le'Veon Bell. We saw Xavier Rhodes, as you said, basically lock down Antonio Brown. I mean, that's something that's not going to get talked about because the Vikings got, smoked so badly. But Xavier Rhodes was, unbelievable. He probably had the strongest overall performance front to back in terms of, relative to what his matchup was.
Yeah.
Stuck with the toughest wide receiver in football.
The only receptions he allowed were like underneath stuff for Brown when he was assigned off coverage. It was a zone where he was off coverage. If it was man to man, he was at the line of scrimmage. It was nothing. Nothing was there.
And I think the one play, it was the longest play. It was like a designed for Brown to come across the field. And basically, they were able to sort of kick Rhodes out of the play, and that was what opened up the field for Antonio Brown. That was his longest play, at least the second half. I believe it was his longest play from scrimmage on the day.
Right.
So,
I mean, there was the penalty in the first half on the deep play, but
the Vikings
shouldn't have happened. That was right after the Robinson offside, so that shouldn't even matter in the first place. But
right, so you see Rhodes play well, you see Linval Joseph play well. I thought Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr both were phenomenal. Once again, stopping the run. Jesse James was basically not a factor as a tight end, and it really comes down to Trey Waynes, who both of us kind of got behind after last week, after not a great performance against New Orleans, and this week it was the same stuff from Trey Waynes. I mean, he's getting beaten over the top. That's not a good sign. This is supposed to be the fastest guy, straight line speed on your roster. And he's getting beaten over the top by, guys. It's not even like these aren't superstar receivers that he's getting beaten by either. I mean, was it Martavis Bryant that got him over the top this week?
Yeah.
That drew the penalty first of all, and then he got the free play where it was 49 yards over the top. So Waynes, I don't know what to do with this guy anymore. I mean, I can't defend him anymore. He's playing horribly. He's handsy. He's getting beaten over the top. He's getting beaten on the short slants and stuff like that. He's getting beaten with yak. Basically, the only thing Trey Waynes is doing well right now is making good solo tackles in the backfield when plays get thrown out to on screens and stuff like that. That's really the only thing Trey Waynes is doing well right now. And he is quietly killing this defense, because if you think about the points that the Steelers were able to get this week, I mean, you mentioned the one where Robinson jumping off sides, that leads to 7. Then you see Waynes get beaten, that leads to 7 more. And I think the second time that Waynes got beaten, that was 3 more. So Waynes essentially was the culprit for at least 10 of the 26 points scored this weekend.
Yep.
You can't have that from your number 2 cornerback. He's got to be better than that. Vikings need to be, I don't know. They need to be more consistent, and they need to play, penalty-free football. Yeah, better discipline. I mean, they were fairly disciplined with regard to staying on Le'Veon Bell. We talked about the discipline with that, and just not allowing his patience to beat the Vikings. And they were patient covering Antonio Brown. They were patient with the play, with Todd Haley being kind of a creative, exotic play caller. I mean, the Juju Smith-Schuster touchdown, I mean, I don't know how much you can do with that play call. That was just a really nice offensive play overall. But as a whole, I mean, with exception to the penalty yards, I thought the Vikings were very disciplined all around. But the penalty yards, it just continued to mount. And as we saw when you got to halftime, you thought the Vikings might be able to win this football game. But as that penalty yardage continued to mount, as the Vikings continued to be, lethargic offensively, this game just got further and further out of hand. And by the time we got to the fourth quarter, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I knew this game was over. The Vikings were done. I mean, Case Keenum couldn't get you saw Adam Thielen playing for his life, stretching out for first downs, basically throwing the ball at the first down marker because the Vikings couldn't get first downs. This was just it was all around. It was a disgusting performance. It was not worth watching. Period.
Yeah, I got to do the math on that, but I'm pretty sure Keenum averaged less than 5 yards per attempt. I'll have to double check that because there was 37 attempts for 167 yards. So that's 4.5 yards per attempt. I mean, obviously, yards per attempt hasn't been a stat that the Vikings have been elite at in the past, but 4.5 yards per attempt is half of what you'd like, pretty much. it's and you mentioned the penalties. That's the thing about this game too, is that the Steelers offense did not play that well. I mean, a lot of people are going to look at that box score and see 26 points and think, wow, this Vikings defense got lit up. Not really. A couple penalties here and there. I mean, they took advantage of short fields, and I think Roethlisberger at one point had like 34 yards and 2 touchdowns passing because
he didn't need to rack up yards. The Vikings were giving it to him.
They had the Trey Waynes penalty deep down the field for 50-some yards. They had the Xavier Rhodes one, and that was initiated by the Brian Robinson offside, which was absurd. So with that, I thought, moving into the third quarter, and after the Vikings had the Dalvin Cook run to the one, and then C.J. Ham punched it in, it was 17-9 after the missed PAT. But I was thinking, okay, well, the Steelers aren't really doing much offensively.
Right.
So if the Vikings can just stop committing penalties, and then they can put one more drive together or whatever, this can be a game. But penalties continued, and then we had Case Keenum, who, I mean, it wasn't just Case Keenum. Again, the offensive line as a whole, but I mean, nothing happened. The offense couldn't get a rhythm at all. I thought they kind of figured it out on that drive, but it was sloppy, and things have to be corrected against a Tampa Bay defense that I think is superior to Pittsburgh's. So this will be, I mean, I'm concerned about the Vikings moving forward if Sam Bradford's going to remain out. I don't think these penalties will continue because that was kind of an anomaly in that Mike Zimmer's defenses and his team in general doesn't usually make that many penalties that are kind of just uncharacteristic dumb penalties. But I do expect an offense with Case Keenum leading it and an offensive line that's still unproven and still putting together that continuity. You got to have a quarterback that can at least be competent and make those tough throws. And Case Keenum is not that guy at this point.
Yeah, we talked about this before. I mean, this is kind of how football works in general. If QB1 goes down, I mean, expectations should probably go down as well. I mean, I know that sucks to say out loud, but when that's kind of the reality of the NFL. You prepare all off season for, your starting quarterback to be the guy, and if he's not in there, I mean, good luck to quarterback 2. I mean, how often do you see guys have their starting quarterback go down and then have their number 2 quarterback come in and play, good enough to, get this team not only to the postseason, but to get to the point where the Vikings want to be at the end of the season, that's playing in the Super Bowl. I mean, how often does that happen? Ben Roethlisberger did it once. I mean, Dak Prescott last year was pretty impressive. I
know a guy that could if he was signed prior to training camp and was up to speed and could step in. A guy with a big afro, a guy who's been in the news a lot lately, a guy who I wrote about 3 months ago that the Vikings should have signed instead of Case Keenum. But I guess that's probably a discussion that we don't really need to have on here. But
I mean, Colin Kaepernick probably offers a little bit more upside than Case Keenum does, but at the same time, the thing with Colin Kaepernick, and I'm not opposed.
It's irrational to do right now. Obviously, you can't bring the guy in right now, or you probably would have had to do this a while ago. But I mean, I wrote this exact scenario basically 3 months ago, where Bradford's still fragile. Obviously, he just played the whole season, but the guy still had 2 ACL surgeries. There's a decent chance he still gets hurt, right? And this offensive line at the time, we still didn't know how it would play. And Case Keenum is your backup for the foreseeable future because Teddy Bridgewater, again, is still, there's some chance he comes back this year, but again, we don't know. So if there's a Bradford injury, Case Keenum's your guy. And I for the longest time, I was not okay with that, And
I'm still not okay with that. I mean,
yeah, I thought he was a guy who could come in and he could win you maybe a game or two if you needed him for like 3 or 4 games. But at this point with the schedule right now, you got Tampa Bay, who is, they just clocked the Bears by 20-something. You know how we felt about the Bears. And then you have the Lions in the key divisional game. They're undefeated.
Yeah.
Then you got the Packers. I think, the Packers are week 6, Bears are week 5 or something like that. But regardless, you have 3 divisional games in a row after the Bucs.
And the Bucs are a very important NFC opponent. I mean, think about how important this Vikings Tampa Bay game could be down the line in terms of creating the difference maker in a wild card game, for example. The Vikings need to win this game against Tampa Bay, and if Sam Bradford's not out there, I don't know if you can like their chances. I mean,
see, that's if there's a positive spin to this game, it's that if you're gonna lose a game,
yes,
it's okay that it's on the road and against an AFC opponent,
yes.
against really good AFC opponent. Like,
yes.
this is a game. This is probably
not
like,
a bad loss. This is not a bad
loss. If you're gonna
loss.
choose to lose a game on your schedule, this probably was the one, to be honest.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
So in that aspect, yeah, okay, this is okay. But the way they lost it, the way that Sam Bradford's injury appears, the way it's there's the skull scale's dipping quite a bit this week, guys. I'll tell you that right now, because
well, I mean, just let's put it this way. I mean, if we knew that Sam Bradford was coming back next week to face Tampa Bay, how would you feel? Like, if you knew for certain that Sam Bradford is coming back next week, how would you feel? Probably pretty good, right? I mean,
a lot better.
See, I would not be like I'm with you that it sucked the way they lost this football game, but if I knew that Sam Bradford was coming back, I know that also alleviates a lot of the issues that they had this week.
Yeah.
So I would be pretty comfortable with what you just said. I mean, you lose to the Steelers on the road. This is an AFC team. Doesn't hurt your wild card game chances. Doesn't hurt your NFC North chances. This is essentially like you said, if you want to lose a game, lose this football game. Lose to an AFC team on the road, not just any AFC team, a Super Bowl contending AFC team on the road.
AFC championship team from last year.
Yes. I mean, this is the right game to lose. Now, if Sam Bradford's coming back, that's all well and good, because then you feel better about, potentially being 2-1 when you face Detroit in a couple weeks here in a very important matchup that, last year we talked about. Detroit games kind of decided the Vikings' fate last year. Yeah. So, if Sam Bradford's coming back, I'm cool. This team is still fine with me. I'm not like, my expectations don't dip a bit. You just basically you lose a game that, we kind of were expecting to lose anyways, and that sucks, but you move forward and you feel better moving on to Tampa Bay with Sam Bradford being the guy. But if Sam Bradford's not going to be the guy, man, we're just going to see a lot of the same stuff, I feel like. And that for me, that really sucks. I mean, that really tones down the level of optimism for me moving forward.
I think, the biggest concerns after this game are, Sam Bradford.
His health, yes.
How healthy is he? I think the scary thing is this could be one of those things where I think if there's a lot of movement on it, or if he's active, it just seems like it's going to get worse.
Right.
It seems like kind of what I've heard, and I don't know for sure if it's a bone bruise actually. That's the report, but they said they're giving him an injection, which is exactly what the guy, what's his name, Chow or whatever, that doctor said it will not help. So I wonder if it's even a bone bruise or they're just covering up, because I don't. Who knows what it is? But the number 2 is Trey Waynes. The teams are going to just throw at this guy all day. He gave up, I think, 10 for 11 against the Steelers. And I think the week before that against the Saints, it was like 8 for 10 or 9 for 10. And the passer ratings have been over 140 or 150 when throwing to. That's absurd. You can't have a guy on the field that many snaps giving up a passer rating like that. It's an easy target. You look on one side of the field, you have Xavier Rhodes matched up with somebody. And then you have Trey Waynes over here. It makes it easier for the quarterback, because you're like, all right, I'll just go to Trey Waynes.
And it narrows down.
It doesn't matter who the receiver is. The progression's easier, and it doesn't matter who the receiver is.
And you have to feel
Trey
good.
Waynes can't stop anybody.
You also have to feel good about the possibility of getting a flag thrown too.
Right.
What is it? I think it's 2 weeks in a row now that Waynes has been flagged, right? Like big time,
He still gave up the completion.
Right. Yeah, but big time. So if you're targeting Trey Waynes right now, he's basically giving up a long pass interference penalty like 10% of the time.
Right.
Why would you not target that guy?
For reference, okay, so you guys can feel how you want about Pro Football Focus, but their grade for him right now is 42.9, which is very bad, but he's still one of the most efficient tacklers in the league. So think about how bad he has been in coverage. If he's at 42.9 and he's one of the most efficient tacklers in the league as a defensive back.
Right. We can't. It's gotten to the point now where we can't defend him anymore. Right. Coming off of last week, I thought that us defending him for being, a good tackler and a solid number 2, that was an acceptable take. I liked our stance on that last week. This week, that doesn't hold up. He's been so poor in coverage that we can't defend him anymore. And now, okay, so if he's problem number 2 here, obviously we can't fix problem number 1, right? Sam Bradford's going to get healthy or he's not. There's nothing you and I can do about that. Problem number 2 you're saying is Trey Waynes, so how do we fix that problem? Tremaine Brock, obviously inactive last week. So let's talk a little bit about these. possible scenarios, ways that we could potentially fix this, because I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little bit sick about talking about the Vikings getting smoked. So let's talk about a way for them to not have that happen again here. You got Tremaine Brock. He was inactive last week. In my opinion, the reason why he was inactive is because he didn't know the playbook well enough.
Yeah. It was a Sam Bradford week 1 last year type of thing.
Right, and I understand that move. I understand that move for sure for the Vikings. But moving forward, I think that he has to be a strong candidate to be that number 2 cornerback on the outside. You also have Mackenzie Alexander, who's quietly playing pretty damn well. Like you said with PFF, it depends on what you think about PFF. I don't care what you think about him. We're going to give you the numbers anyways. I believe Mackenzie Alexander is sitting with something like an
81.1.
Yeah, 81.1.
81.3 in coverage.
Yeah, so he's been very solid, and he made his money at Clemson playing on the outside, so he's got to be a candidate to move to the outside as well. Now, the third and final candidate is Terrence Newman, who he got smoked a couple times last week, too, against Pittsburgh. He looks like he's lost a step. It looks like the fountain of youth is finally coming for his soul, because he does not look like the same cornerback out there. So basically, the Vikings have Xavier Rhodes, who is doing everything and anything possible to just shut down one side of the field and doing a hell of a job with it. And then you've got a bunch of cornerbacks that are either inconsistent, too old, or Trey Waynes. I don't know what you're supposed to do here, but what do you think the Vikings do against Tampa Bay next week? Mike Evans versus Xavier Rhodes is, you feel
that's
good.
Gonna be fun.
You probably feel pretty good about that. But after that, they have O.J. Howard over the middle at tight end.
Yeah. Sean Jackson. There's your burner.
That's who you like. 2 weeks ago, you really liked Trey Waynes versus Deshaun Jackson, but now it's like, he's getting beat over the top. This does not sound like a good matchup.
You can't put Terrence Newman on Deshaun Jackson.
No, you can't.
You can't do that. Can you put Tremaine Brock on Jackson? Does Brock have the speed? Probably not. Does Mackenzie Alexander have the speed?
Probably not.
I don't know. I feel like you can't bring Brock in and immediately start him as your outside corner opposite Rhodes, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But I think ideally Brock is your CB2 on the outside in base, and then you move him into the slot in nickel with Mack outside at this point, and then Newman rotates in. I kind of think he should play some safety in passing situations in for Sendejo personally, because obviously we know how good he is in zone coverage. But I mean, Trey Wayne's out of the equation now. He's played himself out of snaps, I think, at this point. And if they continue to play him, I think we have to go back to Rick Spielman's that thing he has with his draft picks and giving them every possible chance to succeed. I think we have to go back to that and kind of evaluate his.
So at this point now, we've seen basically 2 1/8 season out of Trey Waynes. Are you ready to call him a bust? If you take him off the field and basically neutralize his presence, you're essentially calling him a bust.
Yeah, I think I have to call him a bust right now. I hate to do that because I hate being the guy that has a knee-jerk reaction to things, but
it has been really bad.
This is his third season. This is his third season in the league, and his first 2 games of his third season were. It's a regression from the last 2 years.
For the record, think about it like this, and I remember this vividly because I was very in on Trey Waynes on his first game because, obviously, as you might remember, I was a huge Marcus Peters fan, so I was looking for reasons for Trey Waynes to not be the guy, right? But the Hall of Fame game when Trey Waynes made his debut, right? This was 2 years ago. Sammy Coates beat him over the top. Obviously, Sammy Coates no longer with Pittsburgh anymore. He's in Cleveland now and not playing for Cleveland. Beat him over the top. He got 3 penalties called on him in that game. So basically, 2 years later, he's doing the exact same thing. The exact same thing. In a game that matters now. How can you feel comfortable with this guy moving forward? I'm trying to feel comfortable with Trey Waynes. I have done everything possible over the last 5 weeks to start to feel to try to make not just myself, but you and our audience as well feel better about Trey Waynes. And as far as I'm concerned, he has blown that coverage as well. I can't cover his ass anymore.
Nice play on words.
I can't.
I like that.
I can't. I want to, but I can't. He's not doing anything well right now except for tackling, which, for the record, he is still tackling very, very well. which I'm sure Mike Zimmer loves. And honestly,
that's probably why they love him.
I was just going to say, I'm sure that's why he's going to be out there on Sunday as CB2 once again. So
yeah, he'll get beat deep for a 50-yard pass, but you bet your butt he's going to make that tackle.
Yeah, he's going to make that. He's going to make that great tackle on the screen to Deshaun Jackson midway through the fourth quarter when the Vikings are already down by 17. So, very frustrating game. I do think that the Vikings can rebound from this. I think that there's a lot that you can take away from this. And then, like we said before, if you're going to lose a game, this is the right team to lose to. But other than those, it's early in the season. There's still reason to be optimistic with this team. I mean, Danielle Hunter hasn't really realized his potential yet. We saw him get some pressures against Pittsburgh, but overall he was fairly quiet. Everson Griffin's actually off to a pretty nice start this year. You can hold on to that. Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks both look like they're off to a pretty good start this year, so that's another thing to be optimistic about. Harrison Smith actually got beat around a little bit against Pittsburgh last week. That was the first time that I've seen
Juju Smith-Schuster slamming him up the middle there. I mean, he had a pretty good game overall, but that was weird.
That was weird.
That image weird. Of Harrison Smith falling backwards.
That's not gonna.
A small receiver gets him.
Yeah, that's not gonna. I doubt that's ever gonna happen again. So there's a lot of things that went wrong for the Vikings last week that I don't expect to be trends. Right. I think the Vikings will be better in a lot of areas. Like I thought Riley Reif was outstanding week 1. He was probably average to subpar in week 2. I think that Case Keenum got himself into, like you said, backing it up instead of stepping up in the pocket, got himself into a lot of trouble and probably created some of the sacks for himself. I still don't believe Pittsburgh's defensive line is as good as people advertise it.
They disguise things really well. I will give them that. But that obviously caused problems for the Vikings because, again, there's no continuity there, no communication, or through that. So that obviously led to a lot of the issues on offense. But.
Yeah, I think the Vikings can honestly the Vikings are at it's really early, but the Vikings are kind of at a fork in the road early in the season here. They're 1-1. They're still in a pretty good situation. We saw Green Bay get absolutely smoked by Atlanta last night as well, which at least for me, I'm assuming probably for you guys as well, probably alleviated some of the pain of losing the Steelers earlier in the day. Detroit, we saw win tonight on Monday Night Football, absolutely smoked the New York Giants, who look really bad. They're 2-0 and leading the division, so the Vikings are still in position right now to, come back and be the top team in the North. By no means is their season over with here, but so much hinges on the health of Sam Bradford.
Yep.
And I think that you have to be, if you're a Vikings fan, I think that you have to be concerned with all the speculation going around that it's the same knee that this guy has had a grade 3 ACL tear on twice. I'm not feeling confident. I'm nervous. I'm trying to be optimistic here, but I'm nervous, and I think that the Vikings are going to go one or two ways moving forward here, and that's down to the cellar where we're picking in the top 10 next April, or getting Sam Bradford back and being the team that we expect them to be, the 10-6, 11-5 type team. This is when it starts the next week against Tampa Bay, and obviously we'll be talking more about Tampa Bay later on in this week here and really giving a further breakdown. But at this point, recording on Monday night, it's hard to feel good about this Week 3 matchup right now.
Oh yeah, I mean. And again, it's all hinges on Sam Bradford's health. He has clearly, a command of the offense, a way of diagnosing things and throwing with pinpoint accuracy that Case Keenum does not. And clearly, that's going to be a difference in this game. And it will literally hinge my prediction based on his status this week. But again, Trey Waynes is the concern. Sam Bradford's health is a concern. Some of the penalties kind of a concern. I don't think it'll last. I think that was kind of a weird anomaly in that game. But overall, I think panicking is probably not the right move here, but being concerned and not, lowering expectations for sure after the Saints game is probably appropriate. But I think now we can kind of get into these Twitter questions here that we had. We had a few of them.
Let's do that.
We had from Tommy Gunn at Tommy the Gun 13. Talking about the Bradford injury, the Teddy elephant in the room is going to come up here.
I was just going to say we should talk about that anyway, so that's good.
Yeah. If this is going to be a recurring issue, can we just hold out for Teddy? Consistency is better than uncertainty. So I think he's saying, if Teddy is all the way healed back, that's one of those things where I feel like a re-injury likelihood in comparison to Bradford is probably a little bit lower. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm all for Teddy coming back in a triumphant scenario. I know that as soon as I personally saw the Sam Bradford injury and the potential for him to be out, I immediately thought, oh my God, this is the Teddy heroic narrative.
It's the prophecy that everyone has
exactly. It's the prophecy that everyone has been waiting to be fulfilled with Teddy. So, yeah, you know what? Why not? Yes, I'm fine with that. If Bradford can't move, I mean, I'd rather. Yeah. I think I agree with this guy completely. It is consistency is better than the roller coaster ride. And if Sam Bradford's just going to go out there and get himself more hurt, I think even Sam Bradford would tell you that he'd rather have Case Keenum start if that's the thought. So I'm still optimistic with Teddy. I'm optimistic with Sam as well. I guess to put it simply and have it be a rather lukewarm take, give me the healthiest quarterback every week for the rest of the year. That's who I want to start.
Yeah, that's very lukewarm.
Yeah,
that's the most obvious take ever, probably. But it is so weird that a week ago I was of the mindset Sam Bradford is the quarterback and Teddy Bridgewater will not play a snap for the Vikings again. And then we hear over the weekend, A, Bradford's knee is a problem and he won't play, and then we hear B, that Teddy, I think Jake Laser said this, that he is way ahead of schedule and will be ready mid-season. So it creates a weird dynamic here because if you're the Vikings and Bradford's knee is not 100%, you have enough reason to start Teddy if he is 100%.
Yep.
Or at least get him into the game. I don't think he would start immediately after he starts practicing in week 7 if this situation came up. But week 8 is a realistic possibility or time for him to play as a Viking, which, again, that's if Bradford's knee is still lingering, if this is more than a bone bruise, which I kind of am speculative of.
The Vikings have that week
actually is, but
the Vikings have that week 9 bye, right?
It actually might be week 8. I think week 9 is when they go to London.
Okay,
so week 8 might be the bye. So that would be perfect then. Actually,
right.
That actually works even better for Teddy.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Wow,
you could start.
This is gonna work out so well for some of these Teddy.
You could start.
Lovers.
He could come back week 9, and in theory, if he came back week 9, and let's say the Vikings lost every game up till then. In theory, he could probably still save the season at that point. So,
jeez, don't do this.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Don't do this.
I'm just saying. I absolutely hope that Sam Bradford returns, and I think there is reason to believe that he might still return this Sunday. But yes, I'm down for the Teddy narrative if that's the best way for this team to win football games. That's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah. I don't know. It's such a murky situation at quarterback, but I thought about this today too. How many seasons in the last decade has there been just a wonky QB frenzy with the Vikings? I mean, it seems like it's every year except for last year, which even though it kind of was last year, it's
last year it came before the actual season started.
Yeah, right. I mean, you have going back to Tavares Jackson and Gus Frerotte, then you have Ponder and McNabb, then you have Ponder and Webb, then you have Ponder, Webb, and Castle, and
it's never been. It hasn't. There's been no.
Josh Freeman. Remember Josh Freeman for one game?
Yeah.
He got cut. That was.
There has
dumb.
been zero continuity at the quarterback position. Zero.
You find a franchise quarterback, and then he either tears his knee in every single ligament possible with Dante, or he's 39, 40 years old and Brett Favre.
Yep.
Don from Ohio gave us a couple thoughts here. He wants us to cut Kai Forbath. And we talked about Trey Waynes, demoting Trey Waynes and starting Brock on the outside. So, what are your thoughts on those?
Well, I'm for demoting Trey Waynes at this point. We went over that earlier in the show here. As for Kai Forbath, it's really weird. This guy's perfect from the field, and then he can't hit extra points, which is, I'm not cutting Kai Forbath just yet. I do think he needs to make those extra points, especially yesterday. You look at how the game worked out. Let's say he does make that extra point. The Vikings are 17 in a situation where they're losing 17-10 instead of 17-9. That's a pretty big differential. He's got to start making those extra points, but I'm not ready to cut Kai Forbath just yet.
I'm not either, but got
to be better. Got to be better.
It's very reminiscent of 2016 Blair Walsh right now. If he starts missing 3-pointers,
yes,
3-point field goal attempts, I will get concerned. But if he's missing a PAT here and there, it's not reason to fire him yet or cut him yet, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you there.
Yeah, and then we already talked about demoting Trey Waynes, getting him off the field, and starting Brock on the outside. That was kind of my thought. And then in the nickel package, boom inside to the slot. One more here from Talon T at TJohns06. Thoughts on the offensive line changes if today's play continues? Would the Vikes target any player or position before the trade deadline? So there's a couple questions there, but
I don't see the Vikings making any trades. Well, let's just get that out of the way. First of all, I think the Vikings have made their bed with their offensive line this year. This is about as good of an offensive line as they could have hoped for. I think that looking back, the Alex Boone move through 2 weeks is not looking great, but I do think that this is the best unit that they could have moving forward here. I don't expect them to make any roster changes to improve this offensive line. Now, in terms of internal moves, Danny Isidora maybe in there for Nick Easton if he continues to struggle.
So,
not opposed to that.
I've heard that scenario before. Now, would you move Berger to left guard and then put Isidora at right guard? Because Isidora has never played left guard before. I don't think.
Right, he hasn't. So, I think that generally, in a perfect world, that sounds like the best move. But you just you don't want to erase the continuity that you do have. I don't think that you want to,
But at the same time, there's so little anyway.
Right. Yeah. That's basically the only thing that you can do at this point. I mean, you could put Rashad Hill in for Mike Remmers at right tackle. That might not be a bad move. Let's see a couple more weeks. Let's get a bigger sample size before we start turning on the offensive line. Yeah. Because I thought they actually looked really good against New Orleans as a collective unit. I thought they looked really good. They did not look good against Pittsburgh. So we have 2 games so far to draw from. They're basically 1-1. I don't think you rehaul a 1-1 unit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm with. Again, it's a lukewarm take, but it's 2 weeks into the season. I'm not ready to revamp everything just off of one loss that was, as we've been talking about this whole show, very sloppy, disgusting, can't ever happen again if you expect to win football games, etc. But it's 2 games, so I'm not ready to make any drastic changes just yet.
I think at this point you give Nick Easton an ultimatum or something. Give him a warning, that he is on the hot seat, or that, Danny Isidora can play and is willing to play and will move Berger to left guard, whatever. Let him know that his play is, it's to the point where he's possibly
suspect.
Losing his starting job. Yes, suspect. That's the word I was looking for. So that's the one thing I guess here, but I think Riley Reef's been just fine, if not better than fine. He's been good.
He's been a lot better than Matt Khalil has been in Carolina. There's a win. There's a win for the Vikings right there.
Yeah.
So
your $60 million tackle is playing worse than our $60 million tackle. And I still think Mike Remmers has been pretty rock solid as a run blocker. But for those trades and potential moves there, as far as the offensive line goes, I don't really think that's in the cards, but I do think I could see Rick Spielman trading a player for a draft pick or whatever, trying to get some of those draft picks back that he has already lost. I think he only has 5 right now. So I do think that's a possibility. But for the offensive line, I think the guys they have right now are going to be the guys for the season, unless a unreal pile of injuries starts to form like last year.
Yeah. So I believe that's our show for today. So not the most enthusiastic about the Labor podcast that you'll ever listen to. Hopefully we'll have some better news later on this week for the updates and sort of rehash segment that will be out later on here. And then obviously we'll be talking about Tampa Bay later on this week on Friday. So look forward to that, and we will hopefully finally get our pregame show off the ground this Sunday. Obviously had a few more complications this weekend that hindered that from happening once again, but we're hoping that will eventually...
But hey, I lit it up on Periscope, though, yes. About to labor Periscope before the Steelers game.
There you go. Drew was a nice fill-in for sure when I was inactive. So... keep checking out the About the Labor podcast at iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Vikings Territory. Wherever you find us, we'll still be there next time you try to listen to the show. So we appreciate it, and we will hopefully see you guys later on this week.